This week we are programming shoulder, and what we're thinking about is looking at some of the nuances and rotation of the shoulder, but some of the big limiters to shoulder function on the trunk. So we'll start with a little posterior cuff smash, which is really not just posterior cuff, but we're working on all the tissue systems that allow us to really externally rotate and create stability. What you'll see is that you can bend the bar, break the bar, and have much better positional turnover after we do this kind of thing. So I love this posterior shoulder smash. It's one of my absolute favorites. Then we're gonna flip to the front and do some blue angel. We're gonna work on the pec and chest wall. So this isn't just pecs. This is being able to breathe, being able to let this tissue articulate so that you can do better things with your shoulder. We're gonna go after the lats because you know I am all about the lats. And lats, man, not only do they allow us to stabilize our back, but also pull. So it's one of those things where you almost can look at the lat as having sort of dual personalities. One is that it massively controls the shoulder, but it also has a lot to do with back stiffness. So improving the lat, it actually improves lumbar function, believe it or not. And what we see is a lot of times when people have kind of low back stuff, we get into the lats, everything improves. And then finally, we're gonna go after that overhead position. We're gonna take a single lacrosse ball, go between your scapula and the spine, and try to improve how that system works. So we're going after ribs, we're going after muscles, going after connective tissue, but really it's about putting that arm into context so we have a better relationship between scapula and body. This is a big week and one that you should be able to pull out on your own to make yourself feel better. Enjoy. This is our standard posterior shoulder mobilization. What we're going to do is take a ball and we're going to address the musculature and connective tissues, soft tissues of the back of the shoulder, really looking at part of the shoulder itself and also where the musculature, rotator cuff arises off the scapula and this sort of no man's land in between. There's a lot of big powerful muscles here. What we're going to do is do it in two positions. We're going to go on our side in this front rack position. We're also going to address it with the arm out a little bit to the side. So we'll start in that basic shape. And what I'm going to do is just get comfortable and I'm going to lay this ball just right on my back, get on my back, and just get into a comfortable position. What's really great about this is it allows us to work on musculatures that directly impact our rotational capacity in the position we're trying to mobilize. So remember that one of the standards of mobility WOD is that to think of, hey, I want to mobilize at the position of restriction. So if I move to external rotation or internal rotation here, that's fine. A normal rotation window should be easily 90 degrees, and I also should thinking about being able to get my elbow, with my elbow at 90, to about 70 degrees here, which is about where a barbell would hit me in the hip without the shoulder coming up. So this clear rotation window is what we're after, or what we're trying to improve or ameliorate if I'm missing some of that. So I'm just gonna roll back and forth, and what I'm doing here on the back of the shoulder is that I'm looking for information about my shoulder being dysfunctional. So I can put the arm straight and add this rotation in what we call a straight lever position or long lever position. And I can also go short and add the rotation with a bent elbow or short lever position. What we're shooting for is about 4 minutes aside here. And what I'm gonna do is, again, just keep looking around to the back of the shoulder. So right now I'm right on the scapula, and I'm just hunting off, and I'm just falling right off the scapula into some of that musculature that's inserting to my arm. And what you'll see is that my speed slowed down here. And that's telling me, oh, I have hooked into something that certainly needs my attention. Now, remember, normal tissues should be painless to pretty moderate compression. So if I jump on here and I see that I can't take a full breath, or that it's painful, I've found an area that can be improved. So what I'm going to do is stop, take a big breath, contract, hold, relax, and then sink in and return that normal motion. So the idea is to try to get as much motion as we can, scrubbing, moving, doing what we like to call informed freestyling. Now, once I've hit a couple minutes, I'm going to roll up onto my side here and do the same thing. Now, I'm not a huge fan of taking the shoulder into internal rotation into this shape because this is not a very great shape for us. I should be able to hit this shape, but here I get to really work on my ability to externally rotate. So I'm going to take this ball, either move it through the cap of the shoulder and overpress. And what's great is that I can be active and then I can use my other hand to just push a little bit further. So again, be active as you can, push your hand a little bit further, and then I'm just working from the deltoid up into the back and meat of that shoulder scapular region. So if I'm able to easily press and get my hand to the ground and I'm not feeling anything, that tells me I should find something else. So if I scoot up a little bit, boom, it feels like my eyes are gonna pop out of my head all of a sudden. So what I'll do is I'll take myself into this position of restriction. As I'm wound up here, I'll take a big breath in. I'm gonna contract and build tension into that muscle tissue system and then relax and sink and just let that ball penetrate in to that rotating complex. Now, again, fair game all the way around the scapula. The key here is that you could easily, I don't know, build a summer home here and hang out. But the idea is that we want to have this nice dose working on rotation this whole time. And you'll notice that in the other position we highlighted internal rotation, we roll onto our side in this push-up side sort of setup, and we end up highlighting external rotation. Of course, both sides are important, but I don't need to necessarily impinge myself into this shape. Once I've hit about 4 minutes aside, I'll just switch around. And so once again, I'm gonna start by just putting the ball on my back and just take a minute, see what this feels like. I'm up in the triceps. I'm gonna roll it further back into the back. If I need to bridge up and get a little more weight, I can. But the idea here is nice is that I'm working on restoring function and putting some positive motion into this position, into these tissues, and while simultaneously telling my brain, hey, I've got to have access to this shape. And so what we always want to do is, again, try to match a shape with a mobilization, right? So we're not ever just playing what we call press and guess. We're always having a specific goal around what we're trying to do. And in this situation, as soon as I go long lever, I find a lot more in that posterior shoulder in this position that feels like it has my attention, right? So I'm gonna hang out here for just a few minutes on the side. I'm just gonna get 2 minutes working around, and anywhere on the scapula to the arm is fair game here. And if you're finding that this has your attention, check mark it, and remember that you can easily come back to this tomorrow. So just working, I'm a little bit further south on the scapula here. I'm just rotating back and forth, and then getting as much motion as I feel like I can, moving slowly. And if it takes my breath away, I take a 4-second inhale, I contract on the ball, and I exhale and sink and let that continue to move. And what's great about this now also is that I can easily move onto my shoulder into this position. Now, ball is in the same area, but because I brought the arm out to the side, I've completely changed the orientation of some of those fibers and what's happening with the mechanics of the shoulder. So now I'm up on my shoulder, I get a little bit more weight through the system. Here I find that a short lever position works a little bit better. Working on pressing into overpressure. So I'm just taking myself actively to end range, trying to own that shape. End range, overpress. And again, looking at from the deltoid cap here, can I smush up into that deltoid cap? Looking at how that's impacting my rotation through the arm. Getting as much motion as I can. Making sure that it feels comfortable and feels good, and then feeling completely competent to get this deep into the meat of that intersection between scapula and shoulder. Adding rotation, overpressure. I can build isometrics here, which are great. End range isometrics are powerful. They tell my brain I have to own this shape. They tell the tissues where to go and how to reorganize. And this is a wonderful way to restore rotation in movements that require lots of rotation. One of the first things we see that goes when we're fatigued is our ability to create effective rotation. We just lose our rotational stability and we start to use the big muscles to create that rotation for us. And it turns out that's less effective. So when I'm trying to prime myself or get myself turned back on, or be effective or recover after big fatigue, posterior shoulder rotation is near the tops because we do so much out here. So our idea here is to try to get 4 minutes aside, watching your breathing, working on being active through rotation as much as you can. hit the back of that shoulder in a couple different positions, out to the side, and also arm here, and you'll see big changes. I call this mobilization the Blue Angel. What we're going to need is a ball of some kind. What we're going to try to do is just address the pec wall. You can think about this as 3 to 4 minutes on each side. I think we're going to try to do 3 minutes on each side on this. What I'm going to do is start comfortably somewhere where the pec is inserting at the chest wall. And what's interesting about this is I can get some real pressure in here and keep the arm into this mid-range position. This is our hang archetype in this shape in a long lever position. And what this allows me to do is work on overhead and swoop the hand down and even put the hand on my back into this little bit of an extension position and press shape. And this is why we call it the Blue Angel, because we're using a supernova and you're making snow angels of pain. So what I'm going to do here is, again, keep an eye on my breathing. I can even add a little bit of a wind up if I want to take up the fascia slack and move through. And the idea is to try to either roll slowly through as much pec as I can muster in about 3 minutes, or to find something that's interesting and seeing if I can move my shoulder through this range of motion. One of the nice things is as soon as I get the hand out of the way, I can get some real pressure on it by just rolling up obliquely. And what I'm doing is just following initially the outline of the collarbone here. So feel free to take that up, scrub and depress. And then as I get out near the shoulder, I'm a little bit constrained by the ground, but I can turn that hand up as I get in the back and really start to smash in and address some of the soft tissues deep into the shoulder. What I'm looking at here is where the shoulder is coming into the pec. So I'm just tracing the outline of the scapula here and then working until I hit that shoulder. And then in this position, I can even put my hand on my back and again roll slowly through here, keeping on my breathing, scanning. I should be able to take some pretty significant pressures through here. And if I find something in some position that doesn't feel good, then by all means start with your contract relax. So I'll take a big breath in, I'll hold for 4 seconds, build an isometric at that end range, and then exhale, telling my brain, let this thing go. What's nice about this, again, is that I'm free to follow the outline of the chest wall, and then I can even take this deep into the pec and almost lift the pec up off the side. So right now I'm kind of in the side pec area, and I can put this arm over my head and then start to push this down in this circle. And as I start to wind up in this position, you feel how the pec changes shape and really changes in the bias of the load through the chest wall. So again, just nice and easy, keeping an eye on your breathing, making sure you're not holding your breath. Feel free to add in a little bit of a load through here if that helps. Make some big circles, press into the ground if you need, contract and relax. And then also don't be afraid to go all the way out to the sternum and work your way across. So I'm actually on where the sternum is inserting into the pec here and then rolling across. And what you see is that if we get this nice little dose of 3 minutes, boom, we can time travel very quickly, get a lot of good work in, and without, miring ourselves down. So I'm gonna hit the other side now and try to start that 3-minute clock. I'm right in the insertion of sternum into chest, right underneath the collarbone. Take some big breaths, big breath in. For me, this feels a little tight here, so I'm gonna drop in and contract, just as an end range isometric. It's end range because the tissues can't displace anymore because of the ball. And then feeling that I really want to make sure that I have access to these different positions. And I'm looking and scouring and then just going to chase this out. Turning my body, can even push into the ground to create a little bit more load into the pec. And almost feeling like I can shear across. So it's like I'm starting obliquely from the outside, following the collarbone, keeping an eye on trying to take big breaths here. So every breath I take, I want to make sure that I am inflating maximally and deflating maximally, because I want to look at how the chest wall is behaving in that load. So if the ball is loaded up, can I expand the chest wall maximally? Can I deflate the chest wall maximally to address the tissues and tissue function here? Because remember, it's not just about making musculature contract harder. It's also about restoring the compliance of the chest wall. So contract and relax, feeling like I can get really into where the head of the shoulder is inserting into the pec, where that pec interface leaves the chest wall. And again, it feels good out here to contract, relax. If you want to bias a little bit towards hand behind back, this allows me to almost take the shoulder into a little bit of extension. Big breath in, contract, relax. This should just feel pleasant, like you're off on a spring day going for a nice walk. And it should not feel terrible as you go here. But what's nice about this is that you can get some long pressure. You can hang out here for a long time and let the ball do the work, let the body do the work instead of having to be so active with your body to get pressure. But the goal here is I'm active through breathing, I'm active through contract, relax, and then I'm moving this arm through this range to see if I can't improve the function and the relationship of all of that beautiful connective tissue through there. What you'll find is that as you move around, you might find aspects of the pec minor underneath that big chest wall, but the whole thing's fair game, and the idea is to try to do as much freestyling as you can into these positions. And once you've accumulated 3 minutes aside, what you'll see is that the pecs do limit overhead. They do limit, these positions that look like pressing in chaturanga, but ultimately having more room and availability in the chest wall will improve your shoulder function. This is our basic lat mobilization. What we're going to do here is either use a ball or a roller, and we're going to try to address this big, hard working muscle on the side of the body. We're going to kind of divide it into a couple sections. We're basically going to try to go from about just the armpit down to the middle of the back, because this lat inserts all the way back, involved with arm and stabilizing how the back moves. So there's a lot of work here. Put 4 minutes on the clock on each side. We'll try to get this thing done. So the key here with lat is that I'm going to start, and again, I'm not going to worry about getting up in the armpit. We'll divide that at another time. I'm just going to get right into the meat here and just lay on that scapula. And what I'm going to try to do here for starters is look at how I can roll side to side. So what oftentimes when people are rolling the lat, they just kind of go back and forth and waste time. I want to first see if I can desensitize the tissues, kind of scan the area. And then depending on which roller I have, this is the rumble roller gator, and it's got a little texture. And what I want to do now is push and pull as far as I can. So what I'm going to do here is see if I can't pull the skin tight one direction and then slide my body the other way and pull the skin tight the other direction. So I'm thinking about trying to restore how these fibers are sliding over one another. The other option that I have is that I can start to scrub the hand back and forth, which will move the shoulder blade. And then the last option is that I can scrub back and forth, just instead of just kind of pulling the tissue and then back, I can start to add in a little bit of rotation. So now I'm going to tighten up the back, make a little figure eight, roll onto my stomach and push, and then scrub one direction, over the top, pull. And then if I find something that has my attention, in that motion, I might try to see if I can't free up how my shoulder is articulating with that. So that lat has attachments all the way up and certainly attaches onto the scapula and the arm. It has attachments in both places and runs down the back and literally attaches at the bottom of the lumbar. So I'm going to work my way down, making those figure eights, pushing and pulling, and then adding in some motion as I feel fit or see fit. And so since there's a lot of meat up top, I might spend a little bit more time at the top than I do at the bottom. But the bottom line is that I feel I can scrub back and forth and then shear the other direction, continue to add this rotation, then feel free to make those figure eights. And as I pull back, I kind of create a little lat pile here. I roll over the top on that pile of lat. I'm going to pin and just keep coming back and forth over the top. So what ends up happening is not only do I just address that big common lat tendon, and I can obviously drop in my contract, relax here if I need, but I'm also freeing up how it's articulating with the neighborhood. And I think that really makes a big difference. So now I start to get into my back, and the lat tendon actually runs all the way down. This is still my lat. My lat starts to taper off, but it's still engaged. So pushing and pulling in the kind of a 3/4 turn onto my side a little bit here. Again, starting to feel like I can make that circle back and forth over. And then as the lat starts to move down the back, the arm starts to play less of a tensioner in there. So as I scrub my arm, I don't feel much. So what that clues me into is that, boy, the time to spend is actually on the back tissues, roll up and over the top. Oh, there it is pinned. I can stop there, go to the front, pull, and then just keep working my way back and forth. And the idea is to try to take this down until I feel like, I just feel like I'm rolling on my bones. I don't feel like I'm getting a lot of work done. And that will start to be at the bottom of your rib cage where you'll start to feel like you're running out of meat. You'll also probably need to start to support yourself a little bit as you travel down. And what I'd recommend is, the first time you do this, start from the armpit and work down. And the second time you do this, start from the hips and work up. So that's the first side. And you'll see that it's easy to lose 4 minutes of time in there very quickly because there's a lot of work to be done. Again, I'm just starting right in where the scapula is here. We'll divide the armpit and the side of the chest into another mobilization. But right here, I want to try to capture the bottom part of the lat onto the scapula. I'm going to start by just scanning side to side. I can do my scrub one direction and then scrub the other direction, take that out. Start to add that hand in there. This is what we call crazy horse eye. When you go a little bit, something has your attention, and when your eyes involuntarily closes, again, looking back and forth. And then I'm going to start my figure 8 process. Tack, pull, tack, roll over and pull, and just keep an eye on that. Now, I'm talking, but one of the things I want to make sure that you're doing is really being aware of your breathing. So keep your mouth shut. That's an easy way of forcing this diaphragmatic breathing. And if you, any point you find that you're holding your breath, that's a place of interest. So if you hold your breath, stop there. See if you can go all the way in and all the way out. And one of the things that we get on this lat is that we're actually mobilizing the rib cage on the side. So as I'm working on the tissues of my trunk, I'm also addressing how well and how compliant the chest wall is. So it's really important here because I'm getting a lot of good motion so that the system is flexible and dynamic, and this is an easy way to do it on a roller. Roll over to the one side, pull all the way back, make those little figure 8s, one direction, then the other, and then feel, once you've tacked down, can you go the other direction? If you pull forward, can you reach and go the other direction? Try to almost feel like you're tearing yourself in half. And then just keep working that thing down. So if I find a spot that has my attention, I can stop there and pin, take a breath, do that contract, slung, exhale, relax, and then I'll just keep rolling. And I really am partial to these figure 8s where I get to roll over the ropey lat tendon and then take the slack the other direction, where all of a sudden the skin and all that connective tissue on the side of my chest is pinned, and it starts to implicate and free up capacities of the rest of the musculatures. And what's interesting is that lat creates part of this really crucial part of the stabilization of your back because it ties into this connective tissue system called the thoracodorsal fascia. And that fascia is part of the way that your whole back finds extension and finds stability. This is why when you rotate your shoulders into a motion, it actually makes your lats more stable, more tense, which makes your back stable. So sometimes we fail to appreciate all the wonderful things that the lat does. And being able to separate those fibers or restore how these surfaces are sliding is really a boon to function of the whole back. So just scrubbing back and forth, and then continuing to make those wheels, and then I'm starting to get into the flesh where I don't have a lot of connective tissue and fat on my rib cage, so I have to just unload it a little bit, rolling onto the side, feeling I can push and pull and just free that up. We don't think about the lat as going as far down as it does, but it's always there and always giving us input. So you've come up on your 8 minutes, and what you've realized hopefully is that, man, there's a lot of real estate to cover. So always remember that we'd rather you have another dose than overdo it on the first dose. So these little discrete motions, solid 8 minutes on your lats today is going to be enough. And if you need to hit it again tomorrow. See you then. This is our rib mobilization for the thoracic spine with a single lacrosse ball. And what we're trying to do is improve how well your arm goes overhead by improving how your scapula articulates with the body. So what we're going to do is take a single lacrosse ball and you're going to place it in the upper section of the ribs into the trap. So we're going to catch a lot of different muscles and tissues here. But what we're trying to do is to see if we can really get some pressure where the rib is coming into the thoracic spine itself. So I'll bridge up here even and see if I can get some weight on that. And then what I'm going to do is play around with two things, variables. One is, can I touch my hip? And then can I get my thumb right up by my head to get the ball into some oscillation? So as my arm comes over my head, that ball drives the head of that rib and moves and restores that relationship of the scapula. So I end up putting that context together. Again, what I want to make sure is that even in this position, that I still have access to my full breath. Big breath in, and all the way out. And I'll come back to the hip, touch it one more time, and it should feel painless. That's when I know it's in a good position. So I'm bridging my bum up, and that's putting a lot of weight in that ball. Again, big breath in, all the way, and all the way out. I'm looking at the ranges of my thoracic spine through breathing. I'm going to move down now, and this is a mobilization where we really feel like a couple minutes each side is plenty. As I bridge up here, what we notice is that when the ball is, or when the shoulder is traveling upwards, and it's moving upwards as the arm goes over the head as it normally would, it's really these first few ribs that end up acting like a big splint or block. So I'm going to take arm overhead, try to be active, big breath in, all the way out, touch that shoulder and come back, and just make sure that I'm not holding my breath. So I'm doing a full breath cycle in this position of emphasis and then trying to get some motion. And then I'm going to move down into my third position. You can see where the ball is. I'm still high up in the trap. What you'll see is that out here, there's not quite the resistance. You'll notice also my elbow is staying straight. So touch the elbow, touch the hip, come back over to this overhead position. I've got a lot of weight through this, and then I'm going to work on just taking this big breath in. One full breath cycle here, out, and then I'm going to come back and forth, making sure this whole time that I'm absolutely just not holding my breath. So once we've hit this side for a couple minutes, we'll just move to this other side. So again, I'm just starting up high where the ball is in sort of the root of the neck, but I'm not worried about the trap so much. I might be capturing some of that soft tissue, but really this is a mobilization designed to improve sometimes the ideas of this impingement, and that when I move this across, I'm pinning the tissues, that's good, but when I'm here, I end up seeing the relationship between scapula and thoracic spine, and so if I can improve that relationship, I improve how the shoulder moves, and ultimately that frees up how the arm is able to translate over the head. So one full breath cycle, big breath in, all the way out, touch it a couple more times, trying to get arms straight, right up by my head. We tend to see people want to cheat themselves. Really see if you can go up and over the ball and try to be active to the end range. Then I'll move down just a notch wherever I feel like that is psychologically. One motion segment of the rib. Bridge up, take a breath here for a second. That feels okay. I'm going to continue moving. Now, I'm a little cavalier here. This feels pretty good to me, but for some of us, it's going to be a lot. When we get stiff, or we don't have good motion, or our musculature gets tight or restricted up this upper range, this may be quite sporty. So stay here. Take a big breath in. All the way. Try to inflate where the ball is. Exhale all the way. Continue moving with me now. Touch overhead, touch the hip, come back overhead, touch the hip. And again, we'll just move down to our third and last spot. So start by just loading that up. How does that feel? We're not trying to impact the musculature. We're really thinking about how the thoracic spine, and more importantly, the rib cage is articulating with the actual spine itself. Adding in this position of emphasis. So I'll take a breath here. Big breath in. Big breath out. Add a little bit of more motion. And then chances are, we've just hit an easy 2 minutes aside. So This is a quick and easy fix to improve this overhead shape with our single ball and mobilizing your thoracic spine.